Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Fred Warner, linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. Abercrombie has the new suits you need, plus all the collared shirts to go with them. The Abercrombie & Fitch Collins suit is the only suit you'll ever need for any occasion. Available in slim, classic, and athletic. Pair with a collared classic. Go with a soft, easy-to-wear sweater polo or a comfortable long-sleeve shirt. With so many different fits and fabrics, you can make a look that's completely your own. Add the Abercrombie & Fitch Collins suit and new collared shirts to every occasion this season. Shop online or in store.
Getting engaged can be stressful. Getting the right ring won't be at BlueNile.com. The jewelers at BlueNile.com have sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds and ready to ship to your door. Get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code SPOTIFY at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com, code SPOTIFY for $50 off.
This is the Daily Blast from the New Republic, produced and presented by the DSR Network. I'm your host, Greg Sargent. President Donald Trump is on the defensive. The Dow fell nearly 1,000 points after Trump admitted that he couldn't rule out a recession. This comes after a week of turmoil in the markets stemming from his erratic flip-flops on tariffs. Meanwhile, Trump's agency heads are raging at Elon Musk over the cuts he's inflicting on their agencies. All this seems to have prodded the Democratic opposition to wake up. We just learned that House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries is whipping opposition to the continuing resolution funding the government through next fall as a government shutdown looms. But this raises a question. Will Senate Democrats step up and oppose the CR, or will a handful of them provide the votes needed for it to pass? The case is strong for letting Trump sink. And today we're talking to former Congressman Tom Malinowski, who's been arguing for Democrats to refrain from bailing out Trump. Tom, it's good to have you on.
Great to be here.
So the Dow fell nearly 1,000 points as of this recording. NASDAQ fell as well. Trump's own people are sounding the alarm. A Chiron on Fox News read, quote, "Dow tumbles as recession fears loom." That's on Fox News. And listen to what Trump's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said.
Could we be seeing that this economy that we inherited starting to roll a bit? Sure. And look, there's going to be a natural adjustment as we move away from public spending to private spending. The market and the economy have just become hooked. We've become addicted to this government spending, and there's going to be a detox period.
Tom, all of this is directly attributable to Trump's policies. What's your reading of what we're seeing in the markets now?
Well, I thought Trump actually had a great response to all of the market turmoil. In a tweet yesterday, he said we should make Greenland rich again, which is, I guess, another way of saying that he is trying to distract us with all kinds of crazy shit. But it's not working because the tariffs are exactly what every economist says they are. They're a tax on American consumers. They're a tax on American manufacturers. They are a declaration of war on the countries that account for most of the trade that leads to productivity in our economy. And the markets are responding accordingly. And this is even before tariffs have actually been imposed, right? Or he imposed them for about 24 hours before he chickened out, but then threatened to impose them again. And so the uncertainty is creating the turmoil.
And you had an amazing exchange, I thought, between Maria Bartiromo on Fox News and Trump, where she essentially pleaded with Trump to provide some sort of sense of stability and certainty, saying that CEOs can't make their decisions and so forth. And Trump just didn't take her up on her offer. She kind of served him this big softball saying, you got to reassure people about these tariffs. Where's this all going? He said, I don't know, they could go up. And so, he's kind of giving the middle finger to anyone who's demanding any kind of stability and certainty right now.
Yeah, and I think it's partly because he has isolated himself in a cocoon populated by people even crazier than himself. You know, I think I tend to connect foreign policy to domestic policy a lot, and I think it's interesting looking at his interactions with Zelensky in the Oval Office. Remember what Zelensky's great crime was. He had the temerity to contradict the president of the United States. And for that, Ukrainians are being punished. Their aid has been denied. They're dying in larger numbers. But it's the same with Republicans. Republicans also aren't allowed to contradict the president of the United States. Everyone is supposed to go in the Oval Office and say, "Oh, Mr. President, you're so great. You've been right all along. Everything you're doing, tariffs are wonderful. Maybe just create an exemption for my company, or maybe my congressional district should get a break from what you're doing. But of course, we love it overall." And so he's actually, maybe that Fox interview aside, he's getting positive reinforcement from people he selected to do things that are horrible for America and I think politically damaging to him.
You've even got some House Republicans saying, Doge is great, but just don't do it in my district. On Tuesday, the House is expected to vote on a continuing resolution funding the government through the fall. It would cut some non-defense spending while increasing spending on defense and on deportations. Another key issue here is that the CR is far less specific about its directives to fund particular programs and priorities. Democrats are pointing out that this would actually increase Elon Musk's flexibility to slash spending and shutter government programs. Can you talk about that element of it?
Yeah, so look, I like most Democrats, I'm trained to believe that you always vote for a CR, that government shutdowns are a stupid idea. It's the radical Republicans who want to shut down the government. But this is a bizarre situation in which the president of the United States and this billionaire, they're already shutting down the government. And so if I'm a Democrat in Congress, like, why do I vote for a continuing resolution to fund programs that are not continuing? It really is just a blank check. It's like giving Trump and Musk $1 trillion and saying, spend it as you like. And I wouldn't be comfortable with that as a member of Congress. I don't think my fellow Democrats who are there should be. I think they should use the leverage that this moment gives them, particularly in the Senate, to say, no, if we're going to give you money, we need airtight guarantees that you're going to spend it as Congress directs, every single penny. Even if we may not like the funding levels, even if we're spending a little less on things Democrats care about, you have to spend the money as the Congress and the Constitution directs.
Right. No more law breaking, period. Basically, what's happening is Trump and Musk and Republicans are saying, let's just pass this thing that emasculates you, Congress. And Republicans are saying, absolutely. Democrats should say no to that. I want to talk about the Senate in a second. Meanwhile, Hakeem Jeffries is whipping Democrats in the House to vote against the CR. That's good to see. I think that suggests the Democratic opposition is waking up. I want to ask you about this. You talk to a lot of House Democrats. You know how they think. You were one once. Is there a perception among them now, a growing sense that Trump is in some political trouble, given what we've seen on so many fronts?
Yes, I think so. And I think they should project confidence and strength at every turn, especially because Trump is running into trouble, but mostly because I think Americans will reward leaders who do that. Who lead with actions, who don't just complain. They don't just stand there and complain. They do something. And the Democrats have an opportunity this week to do that. And, I also want to back up a little bit here to emphasize just how existential this debate is. We've got a lot of cases in court challenging various things that the Trump administration has done. And Trump is losing more than he's winning. And hopefully he'll respect the court decisions, especially if they come from the Supreme Court. And maybe he will, but maybe he won't. There are a lot of people on the right who are daring Trump right now to defy the courts. And so we have to ask ourselves this question, like, what happens if he does that? well, there's no constitutional police. The Chief Justice cannot send federal marshals to the White House to compel Trump to obey the Supreme Court. He is immune to impeachment because the Republicans will not impeach him even if he shoots a man on Fifth Avenue. He can't be prosecuted while he's president, and he probably thinks he can't be prosecuted after he's president, too. So what's left? The only practical check that's left in that worst-case scenario is the congressional power of the purse. It's the Congress can deny the administration funding or compel it to spend money on what the Congress directs it to spend it on. And for Democrats to give that up, if they do, I'm not saying they will, but if they do, it's giving up potentially the last check against a tyrannical government in the United States. So that's what this is about, and why I think they have to be willing to take some risks this week to make sure that Congress's prerogative under the Constitution is respected.
Spring is finally here. For us in DC, that means cherry blossoms, warmer weather, and more nonsense from the administration. To stay up to date on all the news that you need to know, there's no better place than the DSR Network. And there's no better way to enjoy the DSR Network than to become a member. Members enjoy an ad-free listening experience, access to our Discord community, exclusive content, and more. Use code DSR2025 for a 40% discount on sign-up at thedsrnetwork.com/buy. That's code DSR2025 at thedsrnetwork.com/buy. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
So let's talk about the Senate, because I think there are some reasons for not being sure that they'll do the right thing. I do assume that House Republicans will be able to pass the CR with very few or no Democrats helping them. But in the Senate, Republicans will need 8 Democrats to get past the filibuster. Some good signs. Senator Patty Murray, a senior appropriator, just derided the CR as a slush fund for Elon Musk. That's a key tell. It means Senate Democrats are really inclined against handing Musk this power. Senator Tim Kaine, pretty moderate, very respected, says he's a hell no. Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, a swing state Dem, seems inclined against it due to the flexibility it gives to Musk. All that again suggests Dems are waking up. But are you confident right now that there won't be 8 Senate Dems for the CR?
I don't have a count. I'm nervous mostly because the stakes are so high, because I think if they just let this go, that reduces Congress as a whole, and Democrats specifically, to being just an advisory body to the President of the United States. And then we just spend the rest of the year complaining and messaging. That's not good for holding on to Democratic voters who want to see more strength demonstrated by their leaders. I don't think that's a great way to persuade swing voters either, because strength and confidence are the qualities most Americans most want to see in their leaders. So I hope they're willing to take the risk and to say that even if it does come, as unfortunate as that would be, to a shutdown for 2 or 3 days, the stakes here would justify using that tactic.
I agree with you. It looks to me like the case is politically strong for Senate Democrats to deny Republicans the votes they need. Trump will try to blame Democrats for any shutdown. We'll hear the usual voices insisting that Dems must be the adults in the room. But I don't think Democrats need to worry that much about that. If this chaos continues, I don't think voters will say, why won't Democrats be the adults in the room? What they're seeing now is that the guys in charge are completely losing control. Markets sliding, Musk hacking away at the government in a wildly indiscriminate and destructive way, town hall meetings hitting Republicans, not Democrats, with blowback. Wouldn't voters slot perceptions of the government shutdown into that frame? I mean, why not let them keep sinking?
It's a different context from any that we have experienced in the past. Democrats will be able to say, if it comes to it, that It's Musk and Trump who are shutting down Social Security offices all over the country. It's Musk and Trump who are shutting down VA centers. It's Musk and Trump who are shutting down NOAA, which provides us with our weather reports and hurricane safety. It's Musk and Trump who are shutting down all foreign aid around the world, ceding the ground to China and to Russia. We're the ones who are trying to save and reopen the government of the United States by not giving these guys a blank check to do with as they please. We want to pass a budget that actually requires them to keep Social Security going, to keep Medicaid and Medicare going, to keep veteran services going. So it's a very different kind of argument than I think we've ever had before in a situation like this, and one the Democrats can and should be able to win.
I think that's a really critical point you're raising there, which is that we're in a context where Trump and Musk are essentially knocking over government agencies like toddlers playing around with towers of blocks. We're hearing day in and day out Elon Musk just heaping vicious disdain, really vacuous, empty-headed bullshit on government agencies, saying things like USAID needs to die. They're spewing endless bullshit propaganda about government functions that people actually value. That seems to me to be the context that this is happening in. I would think voters will say to themselves, the reckless people here are the ones trying to destroy the place.
Well, I think it's increasingly clear that they are recklessly destroying the place. And I also think most Americans, even if they are not carrying around pocket versions of the Constitution with them everywhere they go, they understand the basics of how our system works, that the Congress passes laws and the Congress passes a budget and the president is supposed to respect it. And if you want to get rid of the Department of Education, maybe that's a great idea. Go to Congress. By the way, you control Congress, and pass a different kind of budget. But don't give the keys to the crown jewels of the American government to this weirdo James Bond villain billionaire who says that the greatest failing of Western civilization is empathy, and allow him to eviscerate things that veterans and seniors and people who need healthcare every day depend on. That's what most Americans don't want to see. So I think weakness in the face of that is not great politics for Democrats. Strength and action are always risky, but at the end of the day, I think Democrats in the country will benefit by showing it.
Can I ask, are you talking to members of Congress and senators, and what are you hearing back when you say that to them?
I'm hearing, yes, we get it.
Okay.
But
do they?
We'll see. I think it's clear that most of them do. I think Hakeem Jeffries is doing exactly the right thing, whipping against this thing. I think Democrats in the House will be fine. I think it's a good sign, as you mentioned, that Patty Murray, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Appropriations Committee, has taken a really tough stand against the CR. Generally, leadership and members follow their committee leadership. It would be a very good sign if new senators like Alyssa Slotkin from who had to run and win a very tough race in a Trump state take that stand. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but we'll have to see.
So you served in the State Department in previous administrations. I want to pick your brain a little bit about that. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, had something to say on Twitter early Monday morning. He said, after a 6-week review, we are officially canceling 83% of the programs at the U.S. Agency for International Development. The 5,200 contracts that are now canceled spent tens of billions of dollars in ways that did not serve the core national interests of the United States. It's all so ridiculous. First of all, these programs do serve the core interests of the United States. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that. But also, this is like a tiny fraction of the budget. Why would any Democrat read that tweet and then vote for the CR? The Secretary of State has said explicitly, whatever you pass in your budget, we are canceling it. That's what he just said, right?
Yes. So the CR will include all of that money for USAID. So if you vote for it, you're voting for a lie, because the administration is dismantling USAID and a bunch of other parts of the government as well. I read that tweet and my heart, that small part of my heart dedicated to Marco Rubio sunk even further. He was one of the greatest champions of American global leadership when he was in the Senate. When I was in the State Department, he would scold me for not doing more of the kind of work that he is now responsible for destroying. He has been a big champion, in particular, of the United States, standing with and assisting folks in dictatorships from Venezuela to Iran to Russia to China, helping them stand up to their dictatorial governments, helping journalists publish in those closed societies, helping people expose corruption in those societies. And part of his legacy will be the dismantlement of everything he stood for when he was in the U.S. Senate. It's absolutely not in the U.S. national interest. It is very explicitly in the Russian and Chinese national interest. And the Russian government has been gleefully praising and expressing gratitude to the Trump administration, particularly for taking down USAID, because they see it as a threat. And I'm not one for conspiracy theories or for exaggerated arguments, but I cannot think of a reason for doing this other than that there are people in this administration who are either drunk on Russian propaganda or consciously trying to serve the interests of our greatest adversaries.
It certainly seems like they're directly attacking the foundations of American power in really critical ways that Russia has to be really happy about. Just to come back to the stocks again, the more these stocks continue to be in turmoil, I think the harder it is for Trump and Republicans to get through this shutdown fight intact, don't you? Where do you see this going? If the tumult remains, will Senate Democrats see that and say, this guy's in real trouble? We're not letting up now. We're not going to bail him out.
They should, and I hope they will. I think, again, it makes me more optimistic that Democrats will show some strength in the coming days. I find it almost comical that Trump and his people they're making arguments that remind me of arguments that like communist leaders in Eastern Europe used to make. That yes, we know everyone's getting poorer, but sometimes you have to sacrifice in order to prove the historical wisdom and justice of your cause. And this is a guy who won this election not on crazy ideology, but on a promise to make things less expensive and to make the economy better. And now he's resorting to these arguments that, well, we have to suffer so that at some period, some point in the distant future, we will achieve, well, in Russia, they would have said, so we can achieve pure communism. I don't know what these people are, pure America first, whatever that is. But you have to suffer now. That's their message. And that's not what Americans voted for.
No, clearly not. And I think Senate Democrats know that. I still worry that on some level, they feel like Trump has got his finger on the pulse of the country in a way that they don't, and they're going to be reluctant. I hope I'm wrong. What do you think, Tom?
I think there's a natural caution to a lot of Democrats that I served with. Democrats have a tendency to overthink things. We meet in committees. We look at polls very, very carefully. We think through all the potential negative consequences that may accrue from any of our actions. And I guess that makes us responsible people. But that approach to leadership is not in keeping with the nature of the challenge that we face right now as a country. And it may be that I I was born in a communist country, and I spent my life working to support movements to fight really nasty people who were ruthless and who would kill you if they won. And most of the people I served with in Congress, that's sort of not their background, because why would it be? They're Americans. They've spent their whole lives in a democracy that works by consent. And so my fear going into this, that some of them just wouldn't have the stomach for what the kind of fighting that we're going to need to do. I am more optimistic about this, though, than I was a couple of weeks ago, because I think more people are seeing just how devastating Trump's policies are, not just on a day-to-day economic level, but in terms of the threat to the Constitution, to our place in the world, to our identity as Americans, but also hopefully because Trump's stumbles are giving them greater confidence.
I really hope Senate Democrats pay close attention to what you're saying. Tom Malinowski, thanks so much for coming on with us.
Of course. Thank you, Greg. Anytime.
You've been listening to The Daily Blast with me, your host, Greg Sargent. The Daily Blast is a New Republic podcast and is produced by Riley Fessler and the DSR Network.